the really good teachers that I know are intrinsically the least selfish people I know, because they will sacrifice everything before themselves to make sure that the job's done properly.
I used to be in a school, so as a teaching assistant in a primary school, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I wasn't aware of any bullying. There was certainly some little cliques going on with some favourites, but there wasn't any overt bullying going on. And by and large, I think the staff were pretty well looked after and happy where we were, which was
it can change so quickly.
Oh, I know what you mean.
School that I was in,
your head and it all goes.
Absolutely, it was a wonderful. I mean, we were a family in the truest sense of it.
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, we had the same thing with our deputy. We had a lovely deputy who was also the ELSA, but was in charge of the LSAs, and she was amazing. She knew all the ELSA kids and all the pupil premium kids that we worked with. She knew all of them. She knew where they were with everything. She made sure that we had the programs they needed. She was on the ball, but not only from the children, but when you went in for an appraisal with her, before she even looked at her appraisal sheet, the first thing she said was, right, so how are you? How's things with you? How's Sophie, my daughter? How's life in general? What are you doing to look after you? And she was interested in the person first. Then it was after a chat about all of that. So how's this last year been? And what have you, how have you found it generally? All before anything was ever written on paper.
Yeah.
And you just knew you could go in there, and if you had a beef about something, you could let off steam, and it would stay in those four walls, and then she'd start writing down and talking about how she could address it or sort it out.
Yeah.
But it was safe. Whereas the one that took over from her, the one that took over was also lovely. She moved on. The one that took over was absolutely brilliant. And then she was only on a part-time basis. She needed full-time, and the head, for whatever reason, wouldn't do it. So we lost her, and then the one that came in, didn't come in, she was made up to assistant head from being the head of year. Big mistake. Nobody liked her as a head of year. Several members of staff, teaching staff, went to the head privately and said, do not employ her as deputy. If she stays as assistant, it's going to be a big mistake, because discretion just doesn't feature in her vocabulary for a start. And so many people were unhappy about it, and yet still he gave her the job, and it's just caused a massive divide in the school. She was one of the main reasons I had enough and left, and so did several other members of staff.
And that's such a shame. And I think one of the things that, I mean, I'm at pains to make sure that I'm clear about is I know colleagues who work in amazing schools that are so people-centred and focus on the quality of support that they give to the adults, because they know the adults are key to getting it right for the kids. So for every bad school, there's a good school. So it's not the whole system. And it's not everybody that's in the system, and it's not everybody that's in a particular school.
It's like any work environment. You only need a couple of bad eggs, and it ruins a lot. It gives the whole thing a bad name, and it causes bad feeling, bad smell, whatever. And it ruins that family ethos feeling.
Yeah, and that's the thing is what concerns me is that if we've got 1,200 members in 4 weeks, and that's just a tiny proportion of the I don't even know how
heard about you so far. That's the ones that have heard about you so far. Think of all the thousands out there that haven't heard about you yet.
Exactly, and TAs and teachers and non-teaching staff who are within those systems who are finding.
What is your Facebook group?
It's called Life After Teaching, Exit the Classroom and Thrive. Honestly, it's become the centre of my world for the last 3 weeks, and I fully anticipate that it will remain that way. And obviously we're doing it you know, it's everybody's giving their, all of the people we're talking to, that they're giving their time. We're spending hours on it. It's not an income stream. It's a labour of love.
Yeah. Because I know I've got a couple of friends that are still in education. One is desperate to leave, but is held there at the moment financially because she's a single person. She's got a rent to pay and what have you. And at the moment, she does Zumba classes and that, but she's not making enough money outside to sustain her.
Yeah.
Just the bills and that without the teaching. But she's desperate to get out. But I will certainly pass that on to her. And there's probably a few others I can think of that might well be interested.
So when did you come out?
I left just over 2 years ago now, after 14 years.
Right.
As a TA, working mostly with the first 10 years were with 2 children with Down syndrome that I was there one-to-one. So I did 5. The first one I picked up actually when I went back to work after having my daughter in infant school, and then moved through to the junior school with her. Then when she left, as luck had it, another one joined the school from out of area in year 4, and they asked me if I'd take her on. So I then saw her through to year 6. And then after that just became a general TA working with intervention children and things.
Yeah.
So I left a couple of years ago, as I say, partly because of the change of staff at the top. But also I just got to the point where I didn't enjoy it anymore.
No.
I was waking up in the morning and I was laying there in bed after the alarm had gone off, and it was that, oh God, can I have a sore throat? Shall I have an upset tummy? I could have the flu. Well, I've never been one for taking time off ever with a forced illness. I don't think I've ever taken time off when I haven't been genuinely ill for some reason, or I've had to take time off when my daughter was poorly or something like that. I've always been honest and said, this is what's happened. I can't come in. I've got no childcare. She's got this or whatever. Until I can arrange something, I've got to be home for the morning, the afternoon, whatever it is. So I thought, when I get to that point, something's got to give. It's time to move on. So there was that. It was the change of the deputy stroke who was in charge of all the the TAs anyway, but also the way education's changed. And when you're in a class of 7-year-olds in year 3 and you're having to try and teach them about adverbial phrases and all these ridiculous things that we had to look up and learn what they were. We had teachers in the school who'd done a degree in English and didn't know what they were, and they expected these 7-year-olds to grasp it. What the hell good is that to them? And when you take these children out for interventions that were behind in their reading, for example, and you get them reading, and they'd sit there and they'd read a line and they'd say, that's an adjective, or that's whatever it is we've done that week, or that's that. And you think, yeah, well done, you've grasped that in the class, but actually I'd rather you just enjoyed the story. Get lost in the story, get lost in your imagination, and learn how to use language to do some nice writing.
Yeah.
But they don't, kids just don't get to enjoy a book anymore and get lost in their imagination because they're too busy being taught how to bloody dissect everything.
Yeah.
And that, and this thing about they'd have the teacher input, and then they'd put the date in their book, and then they'd have their criteria, success criteria for the lesson, and they'd have sort of like 5 things they're to achieve. But to present a 7-year-old with that is daunting anyway. But then they'd start, say it was a language lesson or whatever, they'd start doing their writing, their English or whatever, and they'd do maybe a paragraph, and then they'd stop, and the teacher say, right, change over now. And we don't mark in red pens anymore. We have green, because they don't realise that they're marking still because it's a different colour, do they? Seriously? And then they change over, and they'd have their partner mark their work to see what they could do to improve it. And I thought, you're forever telling these kids basically that they're not good enough. No matter how hard they bloody work, their socks or whatever they've done is not good enough because the person next to them is going to improve it for them.
And
what's this doing for their self-esteem?
Always.
Well, they're my tomorrow clients, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
suffering with low self-esteem and depression and God knows what.
One of the things that it's funny actually you should say that, because I've actually not talked about my classroom experience in the whole time I've been running the group. But one of the things that used to break my heart and really, really annoy me was whatever marking policy was in play at that point in time, and they changed as often as
changing knickers, yeah.
But I had an absolutely, like, the hardest working student you could ever hope to meet. Had some learning difficulties, but he was a delight, and he worked his socks off. And every time he brought his work to me, it was always phrased with, what else can I do to make this better? And sometimes I would say to him, you can't. That's a 9-mark answer. That's a full marks answer. I couldn't write it any better myself. But there's got to be a way to it. And that's been drilled into them.
Yeah.
How can I make it better?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Why can't we just accept?
Yeah. Why can't they ever just be told, that's a brilliant piece of writing?
That's great.
End of. That's it. That's a brilliant piece. You've worked really hard. Well done.
And teach them to accept the praise and the compliment without them then needing to be
this self-regulation all the time. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. That your future clients and my future clients who are going to go into adulthood not having any true sense of self-worth.
No,
and
because they're always going to think they could do better. They're never going to be good enough for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not an education system.
Heartbreaking.
So what if you can do a fronted adverbial? What about your self-esteem?
Exactly. And I just got to the point where I just got more and more fed up about it and depressed. And also as a TA, of course, you're working with the lower abilities anyway most of the time.
Yeah.
And, and they struggle with, anything to do with writing and maths. So although they weren't learning about a fronted adverbial, necessarily, they might have just been doing something about an adjective. But even that was just as challenging to them as a fronted adverbial to the brighter kids in the class. So it's all relative.
And that system starts from the minute they walk into reception. So with the students who come in with that lower starting point, which there is going to be a spectrum of understanding and capability with learning.
But you've got a year gap between the two ages, just in 1 year, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Your September and your August babies that all come in September.
Absolutely.
You have a year apart.
Absolutely.
Terrible.
But you're building in that system is essentially the rot is built in from the start, because those students that struggle early on, and I see it in my nephews that they are very capable boys, and they blow my minds with some of the things that they say. But if they struggle with something, they wobble so quickly because they're not immediately successful. So if you've got that with children who've come from more challenging backgrounds, for whom reading and just a general sort of love of learning and interest in the world isn't part of their daily experience, and there's negativity in the home environment for whatever reason, those children haven't been brought up necessarily with the resilience and personal skill set to grow, and then you force them into a system that is going to impact on their self-worth. And there comes a tipping point. They transition to high school, and within a term in year 7 they are your kids who are kicking off. And they're kicking off because they've been funneled into this place that's going to give them no other choice than to kick off in order to deflect the fact that they're struggling.
Yeah.
It's just immoral. It's wrong.
So there's so much wrong with education today, and I feel for the teachers as well, because the pressure on them all the time to get the target, hit the targets. Of course, they come back to the LSAs and say, oh, you know, we've got to get this person up 2 points, or this person up this, that, and the other. And I say, hang on a minute, that's not my job.
No.
You know, you're the teacher. You get paid for bringing them up. And don't put the pressure on me when I don't get paid any extra, whether they go off or not. I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability, but don't you go giving me this shit, because I'm not.
And that's the other thing that's wrong I mean, I was Senko for quite a long time, and you know, I did my qualifications and all the rest of it, and I had an absolutely amazing team who would walk over hot coals for our kids.
I think you have to be that sort of person to do that.
Absolutely. But they were massively underpaid, which was also always a big source of gripe for me, but there was nothing I could do because it was pay scales and all the rest of it. But there came a point, again, under different changes of leadership along the way, where suddenly my team of TAs and HLTAs became the backstop for absolutely everything that needed gap filling. So, we need some GCSE intervention for this. Oh, well, they can do that. Oh, we need some lunchtime supervision for the live.
Oh, that teacher's off sick this morning. Oh, they can take the class.
Exactly. And you know, I would gatekeep that and say, no, you can't, because I've got so many kids with so many hours, and the timetable was so complex in terms of where I was deploying the support. But ultimately, even at almost that very top level, somebody decided they were overriding me. And, you know, that again, to have to say to one of my TAs, I'm sorry, but you've got to do this.
Yeah.
And not say, I don't want you to do it, and I don't agree with this decision, because I couldn't say that, because that would be unprofessional. It's like, no, it's all just wrong. So you got out anyway. I put the world to rights. So what are you doing now?
Well, while I was in school, I started training as a hypnotherapist 7 years ago. So I started training as a hypnotherapist, and I did that part-time alongside working in school, because I worked part-time in the school. And then when I got out of school, I went to be a crisis worker at a sexual assault referral centre, because my background prior to education was I was in the police. From when I was 18, nearly 19, I was in the police for about 14 years.
Wow.
I had a car accident and got a medical discharge because I broke my back.
Oh, wow.
So I came out of the police on a medical, didn't work for a couple of years while I went through rehab and all that malarkey. And then, what did I do? Went into special needs teaching as a special needs assistant in a school for severely learning disabled children back then. Did that for a few years. That school closed and relocated to an area that was just too far to travel for the few hours I was doing. It wasn't worth my while.
Yeah.
So I took an office job part-time for a little while, because in that period I'd also got married and we started on the IVF trail. Fell pregnant, had my daughter, and then because my ex-partner was in the police still, I had a police pension, which gave us a nice income and enabled me to have the luxury of being a full-time mum for 5 years, which I absolutely loved. So I was at gym tots, Maraca Jacks, park swimming. We just had a ball. It was fantastic. But in the interim period, we ended up getting divorced. And so, of course, when she went to school, I needed to go back to work to start getting some income, because my pension wasn't enough, even with the maintenance to pay a mortgage and that. So, yeah, that's how I ended up in education. But my first job was in the police. So then, of course, having left education and gone to the sexual assault referral centre, because that was working with victims of sexual abuse, some of it historic sexual abuse, some of it current rape, etc. It was kind of drawing back on my past experience in the police.
Yes.
So I started doing that. And again, change of management, and it all goes bloody tits up, doesn't it? But it all goes to bloody batshit. And the new manager we got in didn't know her ass from her elbow, basically, wasn't interested in the place, wasn't interested in what we did or how it was run, or certainly wasn't client-centred at all. And I just got to the point, I thought, you know what, I'm too long in the tooth to put up with this bullshit. I thought, I've had enough. And I just gave my notice, and I thought, I'm going self-employed. I gave my notice, and I came around and thought, oh, shit. Oh, God, now I'm going to have to really do this job properly instead of, you know,
it's not a side hustle anymore.
You know, hypnotherapy, because it is such a powerful therapy, I don't like to think of it as a hobby, because that gives it the wrong connotation.
Yeah.
But it was very much a part-time supplement. I did it because I enjoyed it and I loved the results it gets.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, it was going to become my sole income, with part of my income that I was going to be reliant on, and it put it in a totally different context.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm going to have to start this networking business properly, and I'm going to have to start marketing, I'm going to have to start doing this and doing that. Oh no, what am I doing?
Yeah, you suddenly have to become an expert in everything, don't you? It's not. I remember when I started I'd been running my photography business kind of as a little side hustle for about a decade. But it was very intermittent because school consumed all of the hours in the world. And so when it was a side thing, it was like an odd wedding here and an odd portrait session there. And actually, it wasn't major in terms of additional money coming in. So I wasn't marketing, I wasn't networking with people, I wasn't seeking clients out. It was ad hoc. And then last year when I started into, well, this is my life now, I was like, holy shit. And I've got a degree in business and economics, and I've been teaching kids 24 years. I've been teaching GCSE business studies, and suddenly I'm having to put into practice what I've been teaching. I was like, oh my God, my head is going to explode.
Well, see, you had the edge over me because I had absolutely no idea about running a business. I've always worked for,
other people.
Yeah.
So,
I was in the police, I was in education, I was always in sort of kind of like...
You've worked for two different public sector.
Yeah.
So in terms of institutionalisation,
because I was in the police, and then I was in education, and then I was in sexual health.
Yeah.
So it's three different sort of backgrounds completely, none of which involved me doing anything to do with running a business, because it was all done for me. All the systems were in place. I just had to tick the boxes, fill in the forms. I didn't have to think about how that materialised in the first place.
So what's been the hardest thing for you?
Marketing, social media, definitely.
And what's because I agree with you, that's the marketing and finding my clients is the hardest thing. I know
not so much finding clients now, and I'm finding that as time's gone on, the majority now of my clients are coming from referral, which is great.
Right.
So they're mostly coming in off the back of other clients that have given each client I see. Little tip for you for anything you do: give them 3 business cards and say, would you mind just putting those in your wallet? And if you ever hear of anyone that needs a photographer, I'm always looking for referrals. And it might even be worth with something like you do. I don't know, what's your niche for photography?
Well, that's interesting, because I'm just I've realised really quickly, well, no, not really quickly. I've realised over the last probably, lockdown. I've realised over lockdown that you can't be dependent on one income stream, because that way danger lies. So I was very much focused on weddings and portraiture. And the wedding industry is imploded. There's, you know, it's not going to come back till next year. So that income stream's gone. I was also tutoring, and I was also just starting to dip my toe into coaching and taking on clients. And I've realised actually coaching and tutoring's where I'm going to get my money, my income streams from for the foreseeable, and it's something that I enjoy. I'm not giving up the photography, but I'm kind of surrendering it a little bit, because I think my perspective has changed on what I want to do and who I want to work with. So just before lockdown, I shot Brian Ferry in concert up in Manchester, and it was like, that was like a dream come true, because I was brought up on his music, and you know, even though he's in his 70s, you know, he's still...
Oh, don't, it makes you feel old when you say that. I just like him too.
You know, I'd really got into that, being in the crowd and having that spot at the front and capturing those moments, and I've had some really good positive critique from that. So that's kind of gone, oh, maybe that's where your joy is, do that. So I'm just looking at sort of that as a route at the moment. But I struggle with the the expecting people to pay for something that I do without thinking about it. And that's true of me with tutoring, it's true of me with coaching, it's true of me with photography. I don't like asking for money when it's my income. Okay. You know what I mean? So, it's that getting over it.
Yeah, okay. So for the coaching, what's given you that experience of coaching? What gives you the experience to be able to coach someone else?
24 years in school, coaching qualifications in school, neuro-linguistic programming, training multiple teachers.
And how much of that training have you paid for?
Quite a lot of it, actually.
There you go then. So why should you give that away to somebody else?
Yeah. And it is, that's a mindset.
They're paying for your expertise. They're not paying for the hour you give them in the room. And it took me a while to get my head around this.
Yeah.
When a lot of the new hypnotherapists start out, I go to a quarterly CPD meeting where I trained. And the new hypnotherapists there, they asked them all a little while ago what they were charging. And some of them were doing it for like 20, 30 quid. And we said, no. Yeah. Do not do that, because you give us all a bad name, and you put the expectation out there that we're ripping people off because we're charging them anything between 75 and 85, 95 pounds for a session.
Similar with photography.
Not necessarily an hour. I don't do an hour, I do a session.
Yeah.
You know, because they're paying for my 7 years, my initial training, but not just that. Every year I have to pay to be a member of a professional body too, that check up on my CPD that I do every year, that I have to pay for. They're paying for all the bloody blood, sweat and tears and training that I've put in over 7 years to be able to sit in this room confidently and sort out their life-changing problems.
And that's the same with the photography for me as well, because there's very much a group of, I mean, even when I did it as a side hustle, I still charged average industry prices, because I wasn't going to undercut people just because I had another full-time salary. I with my photography, I charged what I was. But now I'm in that industry. I'm finding people who are coming in and who are doing it very much as let's just earn a little bit of extra cash, and offering weddings for 200, 250 quid for a full day with, you know, all of your images on a disc. And it's like, the industry average for a full day wedding is 1,800 quid. And there's a reason for that.
But when you're marketing it, you see, then you need to be putting out there something along the lines of, if you're going for your wedding breakfast, would you go to the Hilton or McDonald's? Why would you pay $250 for a tuck-me opening photographer? Or would you pay to get someone who's going to give you a professional shoot on the day, who's going to turn up when they say they do, present you with decent photographs at the end of it? You can only do it once.
Yeah.
Those photographs, it's on the day, and if it's wrong, You can't go back and do the whole day again. You can do some of it again, but not all of it.
No.
So therefore, that's what they're paying for, your expertise. You've got to try and get that mindset. They're paying for a service, and it's like you. If you were going to a hairdresser, for example, would you go to a trainee in the college for 15, 20 quid, or would you go to a salon and pay 35 and expect a proper job?
Yeah. Oh yeah. With this hair,
no
proper
different.
job.
No different. No different.
So your training was 7 years part time?
No. My training, the actual initial course that I did over the course of a year.
Right.
At weekends. But what I mean is over this, we never stop.
No.
Training. There's always something else to learn. I mean, last year, for example, year before last was when I first did the training for PTSD and trauma.
Right.
Which is called the blast technique, which is bilateral. I can't remember the words. Oh my god. Bilateral analysis. My brain is my old brain. Bilateral analysis stimulation treatment, and it's a play on. It's a variation on EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. So that bit's not actually done in hypnosis. But I did that training course. It was a weekend training course up in Coventry. Cost me best part of 600 quid altogether, with travelling and hotel overnight, etc. in the course. But oh my god, it was the best training and probably the best tool that I have in my toolbox that I can adapt for all sorts of things now.
Do you value your professional training more now that you are responsible for it?
What do you mean?
Well, I've had this conversation in the group about the fact that if you go back to that institutionalization sort of thing, that you've not, certainly as a teacher, you've no control over your CPD. You get told what courses you're allowed to go on. Your inset is decided based on school objectives. And one of the things that was really big for me last year was realize I was going to have to spend my money on training on different aspects, that was going to cost a reasonable amount actually. And that also was an attitude shift, because I'd not had to pay for a lot of my professional development. Some things I had, but a lot of things I hadn't. And when you start realizing how much some of the courses cost to get quality, there's a big emotional kind of, I'm just about to release £1,000 from my bank account for X. But actually I then really go for that and throw myself into it and appreciate the impact and the value of it. Because I've paid.
Definitely. And I don't know about you, but I've always been a bit of a rebel anyway, and if I don't want to do it, then I won't put my heart into it. So if I was expected to stay on after school to do a training course because we had to do it, then part of me had already switched off and thought, bollocks to you, because you've told me I don't want to be here, and so unless it was something that I was really interested in, they only had half my attention anyway. Whereas with, like you say, with any training I do now, it's because I've researched it, I've chosen to do it. And like the blast course I did, as I say, nearly 2 years ago, I've just paid out another £400 just a few weeks ago to do the advanced course, because it was so worthwhile to do. The initial course covered so much anyway, but there was, when he said what was extra in the advanced, I thought, I've got to do it. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
It's just good. So
I think potentially I'd like another conversation specific, because we've talked around all sorts of stuff and I'm just conscious of time, but I think I would really love another conversation about the topic of trauma and PTSD, and your perspectives as a hypnotherapist about I guess how people identify that there's something amiss, the steps that they can take, and the benefits of hypnotherapy or other holistic therapies as well, because I fully suspect that there are people within the group that different things will appeal to. So I went down, I've got a coach, I've got a personal coach. I've had 2 in the last 12 months. One was business and one's about me as a creative leader and getting back to that. And it's made a massive difference to me. But there are other routes that I wouldn't necessarily go down. So I shied away from counselling because it felt a bit too raw. And the coaching actually has helped me process things in a different way. So I actually don't like that.
If it's PTSD, counselling will not work. I'll tell you that for nothing. Counselling does not work for PTSD. It's got its place, and I'd never put counsellors down. It's got a place, but not for PTSD and trauma. Because the way counselling works is you go along for your 50-minute session, and it's clock watching, isn't it? 50 minutes up. Well, we'll leave that there today, and we'll look at that next week. So you might just, because a lot of people, when you just talk about things, it's like the doctor's thing, and as they're going out the door, it's, oh, by the way, can I just ask about, and that's the thing, that's the main thing they've probably come for, but they just couldn't quite bring themselves to say it. It's on the way out, it's safe to say, oh, by the way. And it's the same with counselling. You just got to that cross, because I did counselling training as well, and you just get to that bit where it's getting near the end, and it's almost like they feel safe to chuck it in them because they know they're going to go in a couple of minutes. But then having opened it up, they've opened up this can of worms, and then they're left to carry it home squirming. Oh my God, it's out there now. Oh, and it's brought it up. So then they go through a week before the next session, and by the time they go to the next session, they've neatly buried it all away again. And then you repeat it, and you keep getting the same stuff out and airing it, and you might actually get to a point where you might actually talk about it, but that's all you do. You keep getting it out, looking at it, talking about it, putting it back in. It's not dealt with. Whereas with and the more you get it out and look at it, as a teacher, you know, the same as I know as a TA and as a hypnotherapist, you learn by repetition. So what are you learning? Keep getting this shit out and looking at it again. You're reinforcing that learning, that anxiety, that trauma, whatever it is. You're just reinforcing that memory. You're not getting rid of it. You're just embedding it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work. Whereas with the protocol that I've been trained in, you get it out and you look at it and it's dealt with, processed, gone. And that can happen in the space of 20 minutes. Cool. You know, it's that. And also the beauty of it as well is that I don't have to know what it is. I can work content free. So if you had an issue, you can say, well, actually, yeah, there's something that happened to me, and oh, I can feel it now. And I say, right, what can you feel? Where is it? Where is it in your body? And, you know, can you bring up a picture of whatever that was? And what emotions go with that picture? I don't need to know what the picture is. Just tell me the emotions that it's bringing up, that's triggering in you. And I just note them down. And then I want to know where you feel it in your body, because everybody feels emotions somewhere. And 9 times out of 10, with anything to do with anxiety, PTSD, trauma, hits around the chest, between chest and throat area, generally speaking. Sometimes it's not, but generally. And then I get them to describe that physical feeling. Is it a lump? Is it squirming? Is it moving? Is it fluid? Is it what? How does it feel? What words would you describe it as? And then I get you to rate it 0 to 10, 10 being high. So if you really take yourself back there now, just think about that incident and bring it back into your mind, and where, you know, what feeling that's evoking in you now. If you had to scale it 0 to 10, where would it be with 10 being high? And I'm looking for them to bring up that feeling for over a 6, somewhere between a 6 and a 10. So if they say, about a 6 or 7, I say, just go back there now. Really, really think about that instant. Think about that person, that you know, however old you were, or that instant a year ago, or that, you know, how you felt sat in the car when that happened, or whatever it was. Or if I don't know, just take yourself back to that instant now. Put yourself right back there in the middle of it and feel those feelings when you think about it. Where does that feeling come now? Because the higher you can get that emotion, the more successful it is in getting rid of it.
Gotcha.
So And then once I've got so I've got what their picture is, their emotional words, the emotional feeling, their score, and then I want to know what negative message is that's replaying in their mind with it. So that might be something like, I don't know, I could have been killed, or I could have died, or whatever.
You're not good enough.
Yeah, whatever their message is, I'm not good enough, I'll whatever it is, and I just jot that down. And then you start going through the process. And very quickly, even after the first set of passes and the words that I use and everything, and then we come back to it and I say, so when you think about that incident now, what's changed? How are you feeling now? What about that feeling that you had in your chest that was a 9 or 10 just now, that heavy lump? And this is where I need to make good notes, because I feed back their words. It's important it's their description and their words, not mine, because it's not my incident. So I feed back those words to them. So that feeling you had in your chest, that tightness, that lump, that whatever it was, that 9 or 10, when you think about that incident now, where is that now? Is it still a 9 or 10? And they'll say, no, it's changed. It's about a 6 now, or it might be a 7, or might have even gone down to a 5. I say, okay, that's good. And what does it feel like? Is that solid mass? Is that changed? And it will usually be, yeah, it's moved, or it's softened, or that will change in some way. So then you go through the process again. And depending on what the trauma is and how deep embedded it is, you might only do 3 sets of passes.
Right.
Or very long, you'll get to a point where they say, no, I can't feel it. Really? Right. Well, really take yourself back there now. Put yourself in that car. You're trapped in the car. The fire brigade are trying to get you out. Think about it. What about that? Where's that emotion? Can you find it? No? No, okay, because they're getting me out. I'm okay. And job done. Yeah, so you got back to a 0. Yeah. But once you've got a 0, I then ask them to put a positive message with it to show what positive message now, what positive phrase could you put with that now to show you that you've processed it and you're okay with what happened and can talk about it. And then whatever their phrase is, I jot that down, and then you do a final set of passes with them repeating their positive phrase in their mind, and I say it out loud. And once you've done that, and I go back to it and test it again, and I say, right, so I want you to really think about that incident now. I'm just going to be quiet. I want you to really take yourself back there and just test it. Make sure you cannot get any of that emotional feeling back with it, and they won't. And that's it. It's done. That's it. Done.
I think there will be a lot of people in the group when I'm having these conversations with people in my head. I'm present with the conversation, but there's like a little side room in my head where I go, ooh, that resonates a little bit. So yeah. So I'm going to bring it to a close. But what if you're happy? I'm going to kind of edit this out because I didn't realise we'd been talking for nearly an hour. Edit this out and I'll put it in the group. But I think what I'll do is I'll ask the group as well if they've got any sort of general questions.
I forgot you were recording all those things. I've been swearing.
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm a northern girl. That's just punctuation. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So I think people will watch and will go, ooh. So I think there might, certainly with some of the other talks that we've done, people have asked questions after the fact. So I think it would be nice
if you want me to come into your group and talk about it so that they can actually ask questions, I'm happy to do that.
And do it as a live?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you want me to come into the group and just talk about what I do and how we deal with PTSD, and I can also prepare a couple of handouts that I can email to you that you can put up for self-care protocols that they can use as well to help themselves with Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's been lovely talking to you. If I can help you with anything else,